You're just experimenting now, aren't you?
Well, we're experimenting, but this
testing.
Okay.
Testing.
This is Auntie Rita.
You don't feel in any way bad when you know that somebody...
No, I don't like it. I usually avoid being videoed.
So
I don't know if you've ever noticed, Abigail, in all your wedding or bar mitzvah or whatever, I've always disappeared when you came to that part. You won't find me on any of them.
Well, the introductions are that you're Auntie Rita.
Oh, yes.
It's Rita Hepner Pell, right?
Yes. I suppose you want my birthday date.
Okay. So when were you born?
I was born on the 1st of June, 1932. That makes me rather old.
Oh, I'm going through a kick.
That's been confirmed.
Well, you've just been insulted by your grandson this week,
yeah,
so you're feeling a little bit.
He's, according to him, I haven't gone much longer on this globe.
And today is Friday, February
The 20th.
the 20th, and we're in 21 Harriet Road in Hendon. Did I say it's February the 20th, 1998. I didn't say that, did I? Okay, and we're in London, and I'm going to come and Auntie Rita's going to rush off and make
make the
shawarmas.
mandi for Shabbat, which I've forgotten.
Don't forget to say that.
Yeah,
and then I'll talk to Uma.
Yeah, and then you'll be able to. Have you finished?
All right.
Right?
Okay, goodbye.
I'm done. Okay. All right. When am I going to be able to see this all?
I don't know. I'll send it to you.
Oh, I see.
It's still going. I'm just going to come sit down in your place. That's okay. That's okay.
Is it a long film?
It's as long as we want it to be, or as short as we want it to be.
Oh, I see. It's going to be sort of like a conversation, a normal conversation.
It is a normal conversation.
It's easier in any
Yeah,
case.
that's nice. That's nice. Okay, well, I'm curious to see you. See you soon, right?
Okay, bye-bye. See you.
Bye.
See you tonight.
Enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
So now we start our conversation.
Yeah.
So
Where do you want to me to start? I must tell you, I was born in a very happy parents' home in Berlin, and had the most glorious young years of my life in the house of parents who were going out of their way to give their children the most happy life.
what were your parents' names?
Walter Silberstein was the name of my father.
Mm-hmm.
And Lea, geboren Levi, was my mother. She came from Guben in Sachsen, in a small place. But my father was born in Berlin already, but originating from parents who were born in the borderline between Germany and Poland.
Oh, okay. So did he considered himself to be German, though,
Yeah,
correct?
very much so. And not only he considered himself, he grew up and became a personal figure in Berlin. He did a lot of work for the Berlin as a city, and was everywhere respected highly.
What type of work did he do?
He was an ordinary Kaufmann in German. That means he was a businessman and had a lovely shop in the center of Berlin in the Friedrichstraße. And that was a shop which was selling men's tailors' suits. Which were made after measurement, and he was serving even royal families.
Really?
The king of Greek came to the shop, got a lovely suit made after measurement.
Wow.
In former years, in these years, nobody who was well dressed bought something ready-made.
Right.
It had to be done according to his own measurements. And we had a very, very wonderful man who did this really. And my father was a wonderful man who made glorious conversation with everybody, even not with strangers. And he was, as I said before, respected and highly respected by everybody.
Did he open the shop himself?
Yeah, this was his own.
Wow. So what did his father do? Do you know?
I never met him, and I can't tell you. He was also a businessman, but in which way he worked, I can't tell you.
Did you know any of your grandparents?
No.
They all died before you were born?
From the mother's side, I know, and the mother of my mother, from the grandmother from the mother's side, I knew she lived in Germany.
In Berlin also?
In Berlin also. And as regular interest, we as children went there to visit them. But it wasn't such a very close relationship.
Mm.
But we went, and we were always very welcome when we went. And I remember my grandmother, in her 60s, looked like a woman in her 90s today. She was a matron.
Right. Everybody came and sat around her?
That's right. She didn't do any work anymore.
I see.
It was quite a different way of life, completely different.
Yeah. Do you know when your mother and father were born? What year?
I can't tell you exactly. I would have to look up documents.
All right.
But what is the matter of truth, coming from a very happy parents' home. My parents were always taking us as children wherever they traveled, and they traveled every year. And I remember vividly my father, as I was the younger of the children,
Mm-hmm.
When we went to Paris, he showed me all the big buildings, and before the I don't remember which building it was, he said, "Remember, Margot, you are now a child, but you will one day be married, and then you have to tell your husband what you have seen as a young child, and that will keep in your memory as a wonderful event."
And look, you still remember it.
And I still remember it. And in my eyes, in front of my eyes, I could see it. I see it still.
Wow. Do you know how old you were then?
And I was more than perhaps 6 or 7
Wow.
years old.
So they took, when you say that you used to travel, you went to Paris, you went to big tourist destinations.
My father was a traveler. He loved traveling. He visited Israel in 1902, before he got married. He visited Israel.
Before he got married?
Yeah.
Wow. That's very adventurous.
He was a great adventurer.
Why did he do that?
He took interest in world affairs. He was a workman.
He was a workman. So he just decided on his own he's going to travel to Palestine?
Yeah, I mean, he traveled with friends. He didn't go on his own.
I see.
I remember Hermann Struck was a very famous painter in his years. And he went on the same ship to Israel with my father.
Really? Huh. So did your father talk to you a lot about this trip to...
Yeah, he showed us photos which were taken. And he told us in the hotel in which he had to live in Jerusalem, that was a very, old-fashioned and with no comfort whatsoever. It was just the great event to be able to visit Israel. And in these years, he gave the order to write a Sefer Torah for him.
Really?
And this Sefer Torah was then later sent to Germany.
Wow. And I think Uncle Werner has that Sefer Torah,
yeah,
right?
He has taken it over. This is the Sefer Torah.
So your family was very Zionistic then?
Well, how do you call it?
Zionistic? Would you call it Zionistic?
Zionistic, yes. We were always Zionists.
Was that unusual for religious Jews in Berlin?
It was not the done thing, really. But there were quite a number of people who were Zionists, and who loved Zionism and the idea to build up our own country. But it was more the idea, it was not sufficient practical work connected with it.
Mm-hmm. Did people ever go off to live in Palestine?
Yeah, I know a family who did that. But they were single, individual people, really,
Right.
not groups.
Hmm.
Now, coming from such a happy family, I had the very great misfortune to lose my mother, who died at a very young age. My mother was only in the beginning of her 40s when she died.
What year was that? Or how old were you?
I only was 9 years old.
9 years old. When were you born?
1904.
1904. On what date?
The 21st of July, 1904.
So your mother died when you were 8?
When I was 8 or 9.
Do you know why she died?
She had cancer, unfortunately, cancer of the breast, and she was operated, but one didn't know anything of after treatment, which one continues nowadays after operation like that, and can lengthen the life of people who undergo that.
But they knew that it was breast cancer,
yes,
and they were able to do surgery, and that.
Yeah, it was done by the first surgeon in Berlin, really. But he couldn't do anything but just remove the breast. That was all he could do.
Do you remember his name?
Yeah, Professor Israel was his name.
He was a Jewish doctor?
Man, yes. And Uncle Werner just had finished his studies, and he was desperate in finding somebody who could help. Oh, I'm afraid I make a mistake, because I had a sister.
Yeah, you should, let's say, who were your brothers and sisters?
My sister was 2 years older. She had the name Elsa. And we were in very good relationships with 2 sisters and my brother Werner. And unfortunately, she got ill at the age of 18 years old. 18 or 19 years she was only, and had, one calls it medically, sepsis. Sepsis is a blood illness. And with penicillin today, one could have cured it in no time.
Right.
But that actually didn't exist at the time. And Werner was just, after finishing his medical examination, he didn't practice yet at the time yet, but he was in contact with the greatest specialist, under whom he had worked in the hospital. But no one could help.
Did she die very quickly?
She within a very short time. But it was a terrible misfortune for the family. And also impressed me very much because of the closeness of our relationship. And that drew me so much nearer to my brother Werner. And from that time on, really, we grew so close that I considered him my help, really.
Right. Now he's your older brother. He's older.
He's 5 years older.
5 years older, and his birthday is
the 24th of November.
And 1899. Right.
So he really lived a long life, and please God, he will live further for many years, not to count, because we all look up to him.
Absolutely, we all love him very much. And you, let me ask you, you had am I right in remembering that Ilza had a twin?
She came from a twin. She had a twin sister who died after 3 years after the birth.
So before you were born, you never met her.
No.
What was her name?
The twin sister? I don't even know the name.
Did people in the family talk about her a lot?
Not really. Only Elsa was a very, very good-looking girl.
Yeah.
She was much prettier than I. I was always considered the ugly duckling.
Oh.
I must have been really. The ugly duckling in comparison to this beautiful girl who was my sister.
Oh.
Interesting, isn't it?
So you 3 children grew up very close?
Very close. And then after she unfortunately died, and after her death, my father wanted to replace his wife, who died so young and left 3 children behind.
After your mother's death?
Yes.
But before when you're saying when you and Elsa were still children,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he chose another wife
Mhm.
who also was a widow
Mhm.
and had left 2 children, which came into the new marriage with my father.
What was her name?
Ada
Ada. And Grunwald was her
married
married
name.
name.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she came then to Berlin and was supposed to replace my mother, but it was not a successful marriage.
How old were you when your father remarried?
I must have been in the beginning of the 10th, I'm not quite sure, 12 years perhaps.
So he was alone for a few years,
She was
a short time, but
she never left the house. She was living together with all of us and with her 2 children.
no, I mean that after your mother died, your father remarried. It took a few years later.
A few years, not long.
Not long.
Not long. I can't remember exactly how long the time was until he decided to.
Mhm.
A friend, I remember, recommended him, this woman is somebody who would take care of the children also. But she was so impossible in her relationship with us that we were unhappy. And I drew away from her and drew close with Werner.
That's a shame.
That was a great shame.
Now she had a son from her first marriage,
That's right.
and
And
that's
he-
Heinz.
Heinz, and he became a friend of Werner. They were only 10 years in difference in age. Werner was 10 years older than this son. His name was Heinz.
Heinz. So he was younger than you.
He was younger. Oh yes, of course he was younger, certainly.
Yeah.
He was
If he was 10 years younger than Werner, he
Yeah.
was about 5 years younger than you.
That's right.
So, and you got along well with Heinz?
With Heinz we got along. He was a nice and friendly man. But there was another sister with whom I could never get close, really. I
Uh-huh.
don't remember even her name. I must say.
Is that Vera?
No. She was a girl.
She was a girl. There was a Grunwald girl.
There was a Greenwood girl. I really can't tell you.
All right.
It's not so important also.
Okay. So
But Heinz also emigrated to Israel, went on Aliyah, and put himself up in Haifa. But Werner never lived in Haifa, he always lived in Jerusalem.
when did Heinz go to Haifa?
Also very soon, can't tell you the exact, after Werner.
After Werner.
Yeah.
But around the same time.
Yeah, he was also married when he left. He was married, and this was the mother of Heinz. She had a child with Itamar, with whom Werner today is still very friendly.
That's right.
Very friendly. Also, I am friends with him.
So Heinz had a daughter, and the daughter.
No, Heinz had a son.
Itamar is Heinz's son.
Yes, this is Heinz.
Oh, okay, all right.
It was the only child they had.
Okay. Oh, just Itamar.
Yeah.
So, do you remember the name of Heinz's wife? Actually, I should know that. Ruth, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Who's Greenwood? Who lives today in a home in Jerusalem.
Now, Uncle Werner got married to Tante Raya,
Yeah.
right? So tell me how they met.
They met when I was, at the bar mitzvah of Werner, who was 5 years older than I. I was getting ill and couldn't take part in all the celebrations, and I got scarlet fever.
Oh my goodness.
And I had to be kept separate from the house, from the room in which all the celebrations took place. It was for me something terrible
Oh,
because I had so much looked forward to this.
absolutely.
That was, and then we took a nurse into the house who had nothing to do with the other part of the, in Berlin the houses were built with a long corridor between the living part and the sleeping part.
Mm-hmm.
And I was placed to be separated on account of my illness.
Mm-hmm.
I was placed in the first civil bedroom in the house. And we called a nurse, and the nurse was Raya.
Wow.
And she was a beautiful girl and a very interesting person. Came from Russia and got friends with Werner.
He was only 13 years old.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
You say
But
his
the
bar mitzvah.
friendship started then.
So how old was she if she was your nurse already? She must have been a bit older than him.
Yeah. There's something with the counting not quite all right because he was already grown up. And Werner was also grown up.
He was grown up.
Then this must have happened at a different time, not at his bar mitzvah. He came in the house to look after me.
Well, let me ask you something else. Was if you said that it was around Werner's bar mitzvah, do you remember if your mother was still alive at Werner's bar mitzvah?
No, she was not.
She was not? So
I don't think she was. No, I don't think she was, no.
So it was another family celebration that you're thinking of when you got ill?
Yeah, must have been.
Must have.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was a celebration.
All right. So they met and they stayed friends and then they became romantic?
Yeah, that's right. It was a very great love. Werner, I don't remember, but I don't think he had many women with whom he had fallen in love. But with her, he really had fallen in love.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very fitting together. She was a very clever woman, and she had a life on her own, coming as a refugee, or as a working refugee from Russia.
Did she have family in Germany?
Not in Germany, but in Russia. Yes.
So she came by herself from Russia?
Yes, that's right. As in her profession as a nurse.
Mm.
She worked herself to Russia, from Russia to Germany.
And, wow.
And you know, officially she was not really Jewish. We never knew that she was a Jewish girl until she got a closer relationship with Werner. And when she got engaged, my father, who had dreamt for Werner the most clever, the best, and a girl which is an ideal partner to him. And when he got to know that it was Raya whom he had fallen in love and wanted to get married, it was against his wishes.
Your father was unhappy about it.
He was really unhappy. And he was not convinced that Raya was really coming from a Jewish house.
Uh-oh.
And he went as far as going, and that time it was not an easy journey. He went to the place to meet her father.
To Russia? He went to Russia?
Yeah.
Where in Russia?
In a place, I don't know the name, but it was in a small place. Meserich, I think that was the name. Where great Jewish Chachomim had lived. And he came from a very from house, really.
Really?
The trouble was only that her father got divorced.
Oh, so it was a scandal.
And Raya has not lived the most of her life with the father, but with the mother.
I see.
And the mother lived in Russia, in Baku.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so when your father met Raya's father, was he satisfied?
Then he was satisfied. He wasn't. It wasn't ideal in his eyes. He had hoped and thought that Werner would make a different choice.
Right.
But he considered it was quite a kosher affair.
But it sounds as though you always liked Raya.
Very much, and they tried to help Werner in his fight with the father.
Mm-hmm.
Although I was very much on best terms with my father, but on this point we didn't agree. And I really was completely on Werner's side and trying to help him in his fight for his right to choose whomever he wanted and considered as the right partner.
What about Ilza?
Esa was not alive at that time anymore, I think.
When Werner got engaged?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. But did Raya live with your family for any extended period of time? When you were ill, she came to live with you, right?
Yeah, but not in an extended time.
I see. And then she went and got another job,
Yeah,
but stayed in
But
contact.
he kept in contact, of course.
Did Elsa and Raya get along very well?
Esa and who?
And Raya?
Esa and Raya, I don't remember that they met. I think Esa died before.
No, well, there are photographs of the two of them together, so...
Esa and Raya?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
I don't remember that really.
All right, so it was around the same time then?
It must have been
Okay.
very near.
So, all right, so maybe they didn't know each other for long enough to form an opinion.
Not a friendship, really.
All right. But that's so, so Uncle Werner ended up getting married to Raya with your father's blessing.
With my father's blessing, and it was a lovely chassan. It was, they both, thank God, were very happy, but they had to fight for their existence in life. And Raya was a great helper. She in her own way, she earned money and tried to support from the point of financial support. And she was an excellent housewife. She was an excellent nurse. She was excellent in whatever she undertook.
Did she worked even after they got married?
Yeah.
Wow, that's very unusual, right?
Yeah, but he had to, and he was made up for that.
She had to because, was Uncle Werner still in school?
No, he was a ready doctor already.
I see.
But financially, they were not really able to lead a home without her assistance, because Werner didn't earn much. He had a position he studied bacteriology and was in bacteriology an expert, and got an excellent position in the Robert Koch Institute in Berlin. That was one of the biggest institution where bacteriology was studied and practiced. And of course, with a very small salary, he worked there.
Really?
And there was not enough for a household to be kept.
They lived in Berlin?
They lived in Berlin, yes.
And you lived with your father?
Yeah,
still
I lived in
Berlin.
Yeah.
What was do you remember the name of the street that you lived on?
Yeah, that was in Klopstockstraße. It is the Hansa-Viertel in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
Very good neighborhood.
Was it a Jewish neighborhood?
Yeah, very Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a member of one of the bigger communities there. Was also an active member of the committee. He was everywhere active.
What kind of committee? In the Jewish community?
In the Jewish community, yes.
So what type of activities did the Jewish committees do?
To build up the community. It was a younger community, and to help with the shiurim, to help with the Jewish activities.
So what type of school did you go to as a girl?
In Germany, in Berlin, what kind of school do you mean?
Yeah.
For general education. I always, very often, talk about this Werner when I'm with him together, and remind him. At the time when I was going to school, also my sister was still going to school, and she went into a much better school than I. And I never understood why was I sent to a private, one called it Lyceum at the time. Do you know this name?
I've heard of it, yeah.
It's a very lovely school, and they had the preference that Shabbat was not a difficult question. I didn't need to write or to cut or to do anything. And it was taken care of very easily. But in the other school where my sister went to, it was like a high school in comparison, where she was also allowed, of course, what was necessary on Shabbat, but it wasn't as easy.
But it was considered a better school?
Yeah, higher, much higher standards.
So
And
did you?
She learned much better than I.
Do you know now why they sent her to one school and you to another school?
Yeah, I think as a youngest child, it was easier perhaps the learning, and one didn't think a girl needs so much to learn, that it is necessary.
What types of things did you learn? What type of lessons did you have?
It was more German, I mean, the usual subjects, but not a foreign language. I wasn't told or taught.
You didn't learn any foreign language in school?
No, I had to learn it later.
Mm-hmm.
I went into a different college then. It's called the Letterverein, where I learned. I was also I learned all the subjects which are connected with office work.
Like typing, you mean?
Typing and stenography and all what belongs to that. And then later I was the helping hand for my father in his business.
Oh, wonderful.
That I remember is something very lovely, because we fitted so well together. And as my father was not happy with his second wife, I grew nearer to him as well.
So he didn't find it a happy marriage, this second wife?
I couldn't have found it because he didn't spend so much time as he could have done otherwise. Mm-hmm. He spent his spare time rather with me.
Interesting.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. But I discovered that he had a child with the second wife.
Yeah.
Yeah? How old were you when this girl was born?
Old.
Do you remember?
At least 10 years older. At least when she was born.
Mm-hmm. And that's Vera. That's
Vera.
Vera.
Vera was her name.
Mm-hmm.
Also got lost during the Holocaust. Nobody knows where they died, because we were able to leave Germany in time before actually the very worst time started. But she had family and lived on in the house in which we lived, didn't leave at the same time as I left.
Right. And then you didn't see them again.
You know, my father started business in England before this time of Hitler.
Who are you referring to?
My father.
Your father started a business in England?
No,
You mean Opa?
Opa, yeah.
Okay. But that's getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, because we're still talking about before you met Opa.
I mix it up.
That's right. But so this were you close with your little sister?
Also not.
You were the youngest for a long time. All of a sudden,
That's
you had a
right.
younger sister.
That's right. I did not. She was. I mean, I tried to behave well, but I never drew close to her.
But were you? It's so it sounds as though you were far in age from her, right? She was very little.
Yeah, she was very little
compared to you.
Yeah.
Was your father very fond of her?
In a way, I'm sure. I can't really remember that we were on a close relationship.
Do you think you were maybe a bit jealous of her?
No, not at all.
You weren't jealous?
No. It
Because
was a different generation.
right.
And a different world, which I didn't enter really.
You were still living at home though.
Yeah.
And she also lived in the same house.
Yeah. She lived in
And Heinz also still lived in this house also?
Yeah. We lived all together.
So.
And the second wife of my father was not also, had not the ability to be a good housewife. No, all these abilities didn't exist. he just always considered her not fitting into our framework.
Well, that's
But that can happen. It's in a way very sad when it happens.
that's right. So you were working with your father in his shop.
In his shop, I remember he had a special office, and this office could overlook the whole shop. And when there were special customers entering, my father called me and made me introduce me and liked that I should talk to them and get more or less a representative of his business.
Did he have many employees?
Oh yes, he employed quite a number of people.
What type of things what type of things did they do? They were all tailors and
We had a department for tailor.
Mhm.
It was separate of the other part of the business.
I see.
There were all kinds of articles that, Austin Reed here in London, the big shop, which only is engaged in selling men's articles,
I see.
ties and shirts and things which are suited for elegant and smart wear for men.
Do you remember what street the shop was on?
Yeah, Friedrichstraße.
Oh, was it the same? This is the same street that you lived on?
No, we lived in the private part. Klopschopstraße
Oh, okay, different.
that was Handelsviertel.
A different neighborhood in Berlin?
Yeah, that was the west end of Berlin where our shop was, like here Oxford Street.
So, how did your father and you get to the shop in the mornings?
There was a train, like we have here the underground, and so there was a special train which stopped in the various stations. And one of the stations was nearest to Friedrichstraße, where we walked then.
Were there many cars in Berlin when you were growing up?
Oh, I mean, you can't, in comparison with today,
Not a
very few, but of course there were quite a number of cars also.
So do you remember cars coming onto the scene, or were they always there and just became more cars as time went on?
As time went on, more cars.
Were there also, when you were growing up, how else did people get around? I mean, I suppose they had bicycles, right? A lot of people on bicycles?
Bicycles,
Not
also trains.
Are there trains?
More train service, really. And also buses, autobuses.
Okay. So
electric buses, different looking here. It's not with motor, but with electricity, which was above centers. It was old-fashioned in the way, but one could it was a certain traffic in town with these kind of buses.
Well, Berlin was like the height of modernity, right?
Yeah, it was.
I mean, were there horses? Did people go in horses and carriages?
On carriages also.
They did.
Yeah.
I mean, was that a lot, or was that rare?
That was for the very rich people.
Oh, really?
Really.
For the rich people,
Because it looked nice. It was elegant
I see.
to go with a car. But the best part of life in Berlin was the theater world.
Did you get to go to the theater much?
A lot. My father was connected with the press. He was a good writer, he was an excellent speaker, and he understood to speak to people. They made him represent their paper even.
Really?
On account of that, we got mostly into the theater without payment.
Was this a newspaper?
Newspaper.
German
newspaper.
What was it called? Do you remember the name?
And I can't tell you.
One of the well-read papers, though?
Very well-read paper.
So in exchange for going to the theater for free, your father had to write an article about the performance?
No, he needed only to speak up for it.
I see.
with a mouse, not with writing so much.
I see. So,
He represented and talked to people who were interested in knowing about a certain place, and also he was a great music lover,
you went to concerts a lot.
very much so,
Mhm.
and took Werner at a very early age to the first concert and to the opera house. We were full of wonderful theaters and concerts, which we all were educated with, really,
Right.
like food.
Right.
So we got also that,
But you were also religious Jews.
and we were religious Jews.
Was that very common for religious Jews in Berlin
No,
to be
that
so
wasn't
cultured?
it. No, there were also, of course, a great number of cultured Jews, but this special interest in culture was a specialty and a special side of my father. He was great in this,
Right.
interested and able,
It's good. So you
very
really.
clever man.
Are there any special performances that you particularly still remember that stood out in your mind?
I saw so many, and of course Schiller and Goethe were very much on the program.
Mm.
A performance of Faust was a great experience, and Schiller was very often on the program.
Did you get to meet musicians and actors?
My father very often went behind the stage and spoke to people, had personal contact with them.
Were you allowed to go with him?
Yeah, of course, he was always eager to introduce me as his daughter. And it's something which I want to mention also. I myself made wonderful journeys with my father. He left his wife behind and took me as a partner for his various journeys.
Journeys to where?
We went, for instance, very often to Marienbad and Karlsbad in Czechoslovakia, to Prague. We visited Prague. He tried to introduce me to interesting people, and very often people thought we were husband and wife. we had to laugh about this, but I remember a case when somebody said, "Have you met this very interesting couple? There's an elderly professor with his young married wife." That was me with my father.
Were you embarrassed?
No, I was not, because I was proud. I was so proud with my father.
Right.
He was a very good looking man. I don't know whether you have, amongst the picture, have you seen?
Absolutely, definitely.
He was an exceptional, well looking man.
Yeah,
Like a world man.
right.
And I always find that Leo, in a way, has quite a lot of similarity
That's
with
very
my
interesting.
father, because he also is a man of the world
Mm-hmm.
and knows how to speak to people in all circles of life.
Yeah. Did your father speak any other languages?
He spoke English.
He spoke English.
Yeah, English.
Where did he learn English?
He had family living in America.
I didn't ask you about your parents, if they had brothers and sisters, if you had cousins.
He had my father had a brother, two brothers in Berlin,
Mm-hmm.
also his family.
What were their names?
One was not married. He was an artist. He was a painter. His name was Arthur Cecchini. That was the name of his artist's name.
Arthur Cecchini.
Cecchini.
He was a painter?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you have any of his paintings?
Yeah, but many things were left behind when he left
Yeah.
Germany.
So no, you don't have anything of his?
Not from him, no. But Werner has got one picture which is in his possession. It hangs in his living room.
What was his? That was his artist's name. What was was his name Arthur?
Arthur was
Hepner.
his name,
I'm sorry, Zilberstein.
yeah.
Zilberstein.
Arthur Zilberstein. And then there was another brother named Robert.
Robert.
Yeah, also with a family. And then there was another brother, Bruno, who was not married, but he was a favorite uncle in the family because he lived in Wiesbaden and was also a businessman. Whenever he came to visit us, he was the uncle with many presents.
Oh.
So he was very beloved by us children.
Was your father the eldest?
He was older, yeah.
He was older than his three brothers?
Yeah.
And did you say did any of them have children?
Yeah, Robert had children, a daughter and a son.
In Berlin?
In Berlin living. And I think it was only Robert and did I see three brothers?
Arthur, you said.
Arthur and Robert, the two brothers.
Did Arthur have any children?
No, he was not married.
He was not married, so only one brother was married.
Yeah.
And were you close with your cousins?
Close is not the right word. We met occasionally, and we met, the main meeting place was, my father gave the Seder every year.
Ah.
And in his house, all the family gathered together on the Seder night.
What was Seder night like?
Beautiful. Beautiful because my father had the gift to explain everything what was to be explained.
Did you understand any Hebrew when you read the Haggadah?
I went to school, Jewish school, and got lessons in Hebrew.
After you were done with your regular classes, you would go every afternoon?
No, only Sunday, I remember.
On Sunday?
Yeah, for 3 hours on Sunday we learned Jewish subjects. And in later years I followed up and learned more when I went to the same teacher to which Werner went. Privately he was taught, and I was allowed to listen to it. But I actually was taught, I don't remember, but I think I was more listening.
Really? And what sort of things was he learning?
Mishnayos and Gemara.
So you absorbed a lot just from listening?
Yeah, just from listening.
Very interesting. And when you took your Hebrew lessons, was it in German? It was taught in German to you?
In German, yes.
What types of things, when you were taking classes, what types of things did you learn?
I learned Jewish history.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned, of course, dinim.
Mm-hmm.
And how to write in Hebrew.
Right. Did anybody use Hebrews conversationally?
I know only the one family who went on Aliyah to Israel, who also were able to speak.
What, do you remember their names?
That was the leader of the, what do you call it? Bibliothek is a German word. It's terrible. The one who keeps guard about books. It's not a bookkeeper, but he is
the librarian?
The librarian, yes.
Really?
He was the main librarian in the Jewish community.
Interesting.
And he was able to speak a perfect Hebrew and taught his own family to speak Hebrew.
But it's a peculiar thing because Hebrew wasn't really a used language at that point.
But as they were Zionists and had the intention to live in Israel, he did not want his family to speak German in Israel.
What about Yiddish? Did you speak Yiddish?
I understood Yiddish. Later when I came into my new family, that was also a very difficult point for me. You know, I came from a very German Jewish family.
Right.
And I was introduced to Opa, who came from just the opposite, from a very Ostjüdischen circle of people.
Now, what do you mean by Ostjuden? What does that mean?
Ostjuden, they barely spoke of a German, what one can say German, it was a Yiddish.
Mm.
The parents lived most of their life in Russia and in Poland, and came then at a later life to Germany and lived in Leipzig, because that was a town where the trade of in which he dealt, that was the, what do you call it, fur.
Mhm. What? So was Opa born in Germany?
He was born in Leipzig
And
and went to school in Leipzig, and in a Jewish school and also in a non-Jewish school. Starting in a non-Jewish school before the other school was built. And he had really difficulty with Shabbat.
not like you.
No, not like that.
What does that mean that he had a difficult time? What?
He was not, there was not, he didn't take any notice whether he could take part in the lesson or not. He don't consider him.
Mhm.
And he had to make the best of it.
Well, when you said that they allowed you to come to school without any pens, so you went to classes on Shabbos, you just.
I faintly remember, I think, yes.
I see, but you just didn't write.
I didn't write.
And
I was just listening,
I see.
and nobody seemed to mind.
So what would have been the difference with Upa? They minded that he wasn't writing his lessons.
Yeah, he was not treated nicely.
I see.
As Werner, I remember, went to school in Berlin.
Right.
At one of the best schools existing. I think you learned it in his life story.
He writes about
Yeah,
it in his
that he
memoirs.
was carrying his things on Friday afternoon, so that he had what he needed on Shabbat to listen. Everything was prepared for him, but nobody seemed to mind.
So it's sort of a peculiar Shabbos that you had.
Yeah, it was a peculiar.
So what would Shabbos have been like? What was Shabbos like for you when you were a child? If you had a normal Friday night.
Normal Friday night, but Shabbat was really, except for Yontif, and I don't remember whether we were. I think we were forced to go to school.
Mhm.
So we couldn't go to the synagogue in the morning. It
I
was
see.
out of question.
I see. But your father went?
Yeah, he went.
Did your father go to the synagogue every day?
No, not every day. Shabbat and on Yontif.
I see.
He was a religious Jew, traditional religious Jew,
Mhm.
keeping everything according to din,
Mhm.
but one cannot see that it was one of the Haredim.
Well, did he mix with people with? There were a lot of Jews at that time who were not religious at all, right?
He-
Or
he
who were
mixed
reformed.
with all kinds of people.
Did he mix?
I remember even that we invited a non-Jews to the Seder evening, and he tried to explain what this means to us.
Mhm.
What is that?
It's all right. It's nothing.
That's,
It's a pipe.
what it meant to us, the story of the Yetzias Mitzrayim.
Mhm.
And I remember vividly what interest he took with his explanation, and how people were enthused to hear about it.
Did you have on a regular Shabbos? Were there many guests coming into the house?
Every Shabbat we had
Really?
guests,
So what type of guests were they? Were they either from Yidden or from all different backgrounds, or what?
I speak about what are we talking about now?
On a Shabbos, if you had many guests
in my parents'
in your
home.
parents' home, yeah. Did you had guests in your parents' home on Shabbos?
Yeah, on Shabbos and especially on Chagim,
Where were the guests from?
from all kinds of from Berlin, of course, and people who met my father through the various places where they worked together and outside.
During the week, did you have many people coming into the house as well, or less so?
Less so, because my father worked late out in the evening, and when he came home he was really ready for rest. But he was such an artist also, that we had a special room Yeah, all the pictures were hanging, which he bought in various auctions.
Interesting. And your father must have had quite a few paintings by his brother as well, right?
He didn't consider.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
All right, you get that phone. I'll turn it to the break.
Is it on already?
Okay, now we'll start again. So,
I'm keen really to talk about this more now. My difficulties to enter the family Hepner, being so German educated. I felt it was a tremendous change for me to come in such a family with such Eastern influence and upbringing, which had a completely different culture.
how did you meet Opa?
I was introduced
By whom?
by, he was a messenger, one of the shliachim who regularly visited my father, a friend of the house, and he was collecting money for the yeshiva in which he was a rosh.
Do you remember his name? This man's name?
Um,
Give him credit where credit is due. We don't remember.
I don't remember his name. Werner would know the name. I have forgotten.
So how did he know Opa?
He regularly visited him and respected him highly because Opa was giving him help wherever he could
For the yeshiva.
for the yeshiva.
Was this a yeshiva Opa had been to?
No,
No.
he never went to a yeshiva, but he supported the yeshiva
I see.
and financially, and because he considered it very, very important for the Jewish education to learn. Also, Werner never went into a yeshiva, but he gave him plenty of opportunity to learn. It's from various rabbonim in Berlin.
So this is Werner. So I mean, does that mean that he had like a regular chavrusa, the way that people do nowadays?
No, it was a different way. Werner went to the Rav, whoever was his teacher, personally. There was not a group teaching, there was an individual teaching.
I see.
But he was brought to a way that he was able to learn on his own.
I get it. So, and was that the same with Opa, the way that he learned?
That was the way Werner was taught, through Opa's influence. He wanted him to learn this way.
Through your father's influence.
We mix always.
I say Opa, and I don't know who you mean. When I say Opa, I mean my Opa, which is Max.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, what I'm asking you is, was Opa, Max's education, very different, having grown up in, he was born in Leipzig?
He was born in Leipzig.
So, having grown up in Leipzig,
Yeah,
was
but
his education?
He also went never to a yeshiva and learned also with various groups of people, took part in shiurim and didn't miss an opportunity to learn.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
So, when was Opa born?
He was born in
He was a few years older than you, right?
He was 9 years older.
9 years older than you?
No, 6 years older.
Okay. Do you remember his birth date? It slipped your mind.
You know, my memory for birth dates, for dates, is less than greatly. I wouldn't be able to give you. I know his birthday was in July. July the 5th was his birthday.
Really? All right.
But which year, I can't.
Well, that's something easy to find out. But he was, you said 6 years older than you?
Yeah.
All right, so then that would be like 1898 maybe.
Yeah.
He was a year older than Werner?
Yeah, I think he was a year older.
Okay, so then, wow, you know what that means? That this is like 100 years.
Yeah. He would be really.
Would be 100 years
Yeah.
today. He was alive.
Something which I can't grasp, really. Really.
Well, you probably don't think of yourself, you probably think of yourself as a 19-year-old girl, right?
No, not that is exaggerated, but I can't grasp that I'm the age which I am.
You don't act the age that you are, so, you know.
No, I can't grasp it. I only through on account of my disability of various kinds that I'm reminded always that I'm not young. But I know on the other hand, people of my age who are physically much better than I.
Not very many people.
I know from my own circle of friends, and I'm sometimes surprised.
Here, it's here. Okay. All right, so you were talking about how you met Oppa before.
Yeah.
So this,
He bought this Mishulach from Poland, who came here on regular intervals and took always up the help of Opa. He came and said, I know through my various contacts, I know from a very respected Jewish family, a young man, I think, I know you have a daughter, very nice and charming young woman. I think they would make a good couple.
how old were you?
I was 21, I think, at that time.
And had many other people tried to make shidduchim with you?
Many. I was very much desired in all.
Ooh.
I can say that without being proud too much, but I had a lovely circle of friends. And my father was great in this way that he wanted to introduce me to all kinds of people and took me along to social affairs.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned many people, met many people who took interest in me, of course, and tried various cases also to make me acquainted with young men they thought would be fit for me to get married, perhaps. Didn't work out, but with Opa it worked out.
Were you not interested in any of these other men?
Well, I was, but not sufficiently interested. And there was nobody who pressed on, really.
I see. So did this rabbi, or the shaliach, I should say,
Yeah.
what did he do? He asked your father permission to bring
Yes.
Oppa home?
Yeah. Not directly, he knew the family Merkin, you know Merkins.
Yeah.
And Opa was related, Mrs. Merkin was the sister of Opa.
All right. So this is Zara Hepner.
Zara Hepner.
Zara Hepner.
Sarah Hepner,
She was Oppa's older sister,
that's right.
and she was already married,
She was already married, lived also in Leipzig.
and her husband was
And her husband was the banker,
Leib Merkin.
Leib Merkin.
I
Yes.
see. And where did they live?
He lived in Leipzig
I
at the
see.
time.
I see.
And then Opa had an older brother, Elias. Elias, he was more or less taking the part of his father because he was 20 years older than Opa.
Wow.
And he went with Opa to visit us in Berlin, to introduce him.
I see.
And so I got him to know him.
So describe this meeting of Oppa. What happened? Where was it?
It was in Berlin in my parents' home,
So-
in my father's home, and he was invited for tea in the afternoon, and I got to know him, and he of course was immediately very interested. I was a bit reluctant in the beginning, but I allowed him to invite me, and we went out.
Why were you reluctant in the beginning?
I mean, I can't see that I have fallen in love immediately with him.
But what was your first impression of him?
That he's a very nice young man, and it's worthwhile to get to know him, and not to refuse to go out with him. He was very modern educated. I mean, he was not shy to go out with a young girl.
When you say he was modern educated, what do you
I
mean?
mean, nowadays I see when couples get introduced, it is in a very reluctant way and in a certain set way that the young men and the young women are allowed under the observation of somebody else from the family in the very strictly Orthodox circles.
I see, yeah.
But we were very modern educated, and you hear from what I said before, in which way I was educated and grew up in a modern way. I was allowed to meet young men and young women and mix in all circles.
So yeah, when you were a young girl, meeting lots of young men and women, did you go out with them?
When I was
Freely?
invited, I went out with them also.
And your father wasn't
Didn't mind that, because if he knew with whom I went out, usually if there were children of parents he knew.
I see. So what was your father's first impression of
A very good impression he got.
You liked him.
He was very much in favor that I should continue this, I can't say friendship, but this meeting.
So, and Opa was already in business, right?
Oh yes.
What exactly did he do?
He was in the fur trade.
That was what his father did also?
That was the firm. The brothers together with the father were in a firm, E.L. Hepner in Leipzig.
What does EL stand for?
Israel Leib. That was the name of the father.
That was Opa's father?
Yeah.
What was his mother's name?
Fegelea.
Regalea, I see. And so was it, how did he come back, and how far was it to travel between Leipzig and Berlin?
For a 3-hour train journey.
So how did you have a romance with somebody who was living in another city?
Yeah, he came then very often to Berlin to visit us. And we went out for 3 or 4 months before we decided to get engaged.
So when did you decide, this is all right, I'll marry this man? When did you decide that?
It was with great reluctance, but I got so well known to him, and I liked the way of treating me, and what made me reluctant to decide was only the family. When he introduced me to the family,
I see.
I was a bit taken aback, because it was completely strange circle. What attracted me in the family Hepner was the young women of Opa's brothers. Bernhard, that means the father of Ari, was a workman, and he had chosen a very a young woman from a very German circle in Hamburg.
That's Tante Fanny.
Tante Fanny.
Right.
So if he fitted in and was happy, I took it as in logical consequence. It must be, I must be able to live in this circle also.
So he.
And then there was another brother, Jakob, who also got married to a young girl from a very German circle.
What was her name?
Lange.
Mm-hmm.
Her father was the school director of the Jewish school.
Where?
In Frankfurt am Main.
Oh, so these were also women from very big cities.
From big cities.
Well, Leipzig was also a big city, right?
Yeah. In comparison with Berlin, it was small.
But how would you compare Hamburg and Frankfurt to Berlin? Were they comparable cities?
Comparable cities.
Mm-hmm.
But Berlin was, of course, the capital. And in my younger years, at that age, couldn't have dreamt to be happy in a different town except Berlin.
I see.
I was brought up so well. I was enjoying the life in Berlin so much that it was difficult for me to dream I could be happy also in a different town.
Well, at first when you married, you lived in Berlin, right?
Yeah, that was a trial, that was a condition really under which I agreed to get married.
Okay.
I said to Opa, if anything, I have to live in Berlin. That was my silly way of thinking. And I insisted, and we took a very lovely flat that was was near Uncle Werner's flat even. And but he said to me, one thing I must quite openly tell you. During the week I have to be in business. I can only be coming and live and enjoy with your company on Shabbat. And that didn't work out.
Well, were you happy with that arrangement at first?
At first I thought it will work out,
Mm-hmm.
because I always thought somehow that Opa could make arrangements with his work to put some work also up in Berlin.
Oh, so you thought eventually he'll be able
Yeah.
to move
Yeah.
to Berlin.
That was my hope.
So how long did it take you to realize that that wasn't going to happen?
Only 3 months. It was a short time, isn't it?
Were
I tell
you?
you something, I got pregnant and I didn't feel well at all on my own.
I see. So you agreed to move?
So I agreed to move, and we looked out for a house in Leipzig, which we found. But I was also, until I got warm in this family and really feeling as a member, took me quite some time.
Did you? Did you? I know you said that it was his parents were very different.
Very different.
Did you get along with his parents at all?
With the father I got, but the mother never. The mother, the mother stayed for the last 3 years of her life in my place. When we came back from Switzerland as refugees here,
Right.
there was nobody else who could take her up, because Tante Fanny, a very good woman, the mother of Ari, said, I will pay any money, but I don't want this woman living in my house.
Why
was I agreeable? It would have cost a lot of money, first of all, which we didn't have.
Right.
And secondly, Opa was a very good son. He was the youngest, and he was more than good.
Right.
And he didn't have the heart to say that. But it fell on my plate. And I made my own children suffer later.
What was it about her that made things so difficult?
She was a very egoistic woman. Her love was very egoistic love. She was number one, and she took the right to rule her children.
Was it like that in Leipzig as well?
I'm sure it was. I didn't notice it so much.
Because you lived in your own flat.
Yeah.
You had a house. You had a house in Leipzig.
A house with the gardens. Was a lovely house.
Really?
Yeah.
And what street was that on? Do you remember the name of the street?
No, I don't.
All right, I'm just curious. So, all right, so tell me what it was like to be married to. Well, I'm just curious to know, how did Opa propose to you?
I can't tell you the exact word anymore, but we went out very often, and we grew nearer to each other. So it was a natural way to say it would be lovely if we could live together for life. It wasn't an official declaration, would you like to marry me?
I see.
That was not the case.
It was just a natural.
Yeah.
Did he have to ask your father for permission?
No, that was only a declaration then.
I see.
He came forward and said, we are prepared to get married.
And your father said
He
what?
was very happy about it.
Very nice. And did Uncle Werner like Opa right away?
Right away, they got on very well.
What types of things did when you and Opa went out together before you were married, what types of things did you do?
We went often to theaters.
So he also enjoyed going to theaters?
Very much so. He took part in every cultural society event. And of course also theater and concerts and operas. Otherwise he wouldn't have fitted to me.
That's right, that's true.
And that showed what kind of man he was.
That's true. So when you moved back,
But one thing which I just tell you by the way, he was not a Mizrahi, but he was an Agodist in his young days. He was a member of the Aguda.
What is that?
That meant that he expected, or one expected from him, that his wife would cover her hair.
Uh-huh.
And I did that just to please him. And later years I felt sorry that I had agreed, And when Esther got married, Moshe's influence was so great that he said, I would like you to see it, to take off the cover, because we know that Max is not so keen, the father of Esther.
Right.
It wasn't that he had, first of all, he has changed. He became a Mizrahi-minded man.
I see.
Through my influence. No, I worked as a girl already in the Mizrahi movement.
Right.
So it was so contrary to me that in retrospect, I never could understand why I agreed really to cover my hair.
So it was it something that Oppa asked you to do?
No, he never asked me to do it.
So why did you do it?
I wanted to tell him that I'm a good wife. I will do what really is your wish. He didn't say thank you, but he never, when I explained to him, I take off my cut cover, said do what you think is good for you.
This is when Mo told you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Interesting.
He didn't have an argument.
No, had no argument with me at all.
So did you cover your hair in the home as well, or just when you went outside?
No, in the home as well.
In the home as well?
Yeah.
Really? And that was everywhere. You only kept your hair covered.
Yeah, I remember that Raya, Werner's wife, went out with me and we bought a scheitel.
Really?
A wig.
Mm-hmm.
I can show you in this life story of his. It's a picture on which I wear the scheitel.
Really?
Yeah. Look a second time and you will see. You will see it's not my own hair.
Oh, I see.
It was a very good scheitel, but was I glad when I took it off.
But that was many, many years later.
Many, many years later.
I see. And so I presume that that's what his mother, Oppa's mother, also was wearing a wig.
Yeah, of course.
And the same thing with Oppa's sisters-in-law, with Fanny and...
Fanny never wore a scheitel. She was the one who was the most clever woman because she insisted to do what she thought was right. Her parents never wore scheitel, her grandparents never wore scheitel. But Elfie, the other wife, she agreed to wear a scheitel.
Whose wife was Elfa?
Elfie was Jacob.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's go through who the brothers, because there were so many brothers and sisters. So the eldest brother, the eldest was Zara. Was she the eldest?
But a sister. Brother was Elias, the older brother.
Okay, so Elias, did he have any children?
Yeah, the big family Koppenheim. Does the name Koppenheim say anything?
Yeah.
That was his daughter who got married to Koppenheim.
Do you remember names of these are your nieces and nephews, right?
Yeah, Erna Koppenheim was her name, and she had various children. The family is so big, I have not much contact with them.
Was she the only daughter?
She was the only daughter. Yeah.
They had no sons? Just the one daughter?
Koppenheim's.
Well, Koppenheim is her married name. Did Elias have any other children
Elias
besides?
He had other children. It's strange that I forgot the name of the children. Strange.
Well, where did she go? What was her name? What did you say her name was?
Erna.
Erna?
Erna was the daughter.
And where did she?
She lived in Manchester.
Oh, she came here before the war?
She came from Breslau. She lived in Breslau. From where she got married. And then they came directly to London.
Okay. And what about, okay, so that's Elias. And then who was the next eldest?
Jacob.
Jacob.
Who got married to his wife who came from Frankfurt.
And did they have children?
They had also children.
So who were their children?
That was Eli, who unfortunately ended his life himself. I have heard of
I have heard of that. Was he ever married?
He was married to a wonderful wife But unfortunately, the age of 32, she lost her life on account of cancer.
Oh, was that before he took his own life, or?
Yeah, that was before.
Uh-huh.
So he lost his mind on account of all this, what he went through, emotionally, really. Because she was a wonderful woman.
Mm.
And he was deeply in love with her.
Do you remember her name?
Denise.
Mm.
She was born in Paris.
Oh.
And they had children. There was one son with the name of Gershon also.
Oh.
And that was Ellie, the elder one. And there was the daughter Miriam.
Oh, these are. We're talking about the children of Jacob. Okay, Ellie and Miriam.
Miriam and Ruth.
And Ruth. Okay, so there were three children.
4 children.
4.
2 boys and 2 girls.
So there was another son then besides Ellie.
Gershon, I think.
Oh, Ellie, Gershon,
Yeah.
Sarah, and Miriam.
Yeah.
Okay, so did where was Yaakov and his family? Where did they go? Yeah.
He went to the unoccupied part of France.
So he left Germany for France?
For France.
Around
the other 2 brothers went to England, Opa and Bernhard, and Jacob went to France. He lived in Paris. When before Hitler or after Hitler's entry, he went to under the wrong name as non-Jews.
Hmm.
They lived for a number of years as under a strange name in the unoccupied part of France. Had a very difficult life.
Imagine.
A terrible life.
And all right, wait. So where did we say Elias? Where did we say that he went to before the war? The eldest. I'm sorry. I'm getting confused.
Elias died still in Germany.
He died in Germany.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So do you know what happened to his wife and to his children?
The wife came to England and lived with Resha. Resha Ables is the daughter.
Okay. Resha Ables is Elias's daughter.
Yes,
I see.
Right.
I'm beginning to understand the family tree a little bit better.
Yeah.
Okay. So and then Zara Hepner married Merkin, Leib Merkin, and they went to the United States, right?
Yeah.
So when was that also? That was also before the war in the 30s?
It was just before the war, oh God. Not before Hitler. When Hitler had already moved into Germany, that was the first movement that the family Leib Merkin left for America, because he had their business relationships there already.
Uh-huh. Did he have family there, or it was just business connections?
More business connections.
Very interesting. But enough to get him into the United States.
Yeah.
And
with money you always could get into. He was a rich man already in Germany, and he was able to get money out of Germany in good time. Because he was a banker.
I see. So did anybody else in the brothers of the brothers, did any of them think of going to the United States?
Not really.
So so how did Opa and Bernhard decide to go to England?
They worked in England before the Hitler's times.
What they did business trips to England?
Business trips, yes.
Uh-huh. So this is in the fur trade, in their fur business.
All in the fur trade, yes.
And was Opa's father still alive at this time during the 30s when the war was?
He was just. I met him still when I got married. I got married in 1928, and a year later he died.
What's the date of your anniversary? Do you remember?
My wedding anniversary.
Your wedding anniversary
That was in August, I think.
of 1928.
1928. Yeah.
So, and he died a year later. And where did Fegalea Hepner, his wife, Oppa's mother,
Yeah.
did she live by herself in Berlin? In Leipzig? Did she live?
Together with her husband.
Well, when he died, where did she go?
He stayed in the same flat. There was another sister of Opa who was married and had no children.
A sister of Oppa? Of
Yeah.
Max?
Of Max.
What was her name?
Yeah, I knew this would come up. I can't just tell you at the moment. It's silly, but names,
No,
I don't remember names so well.
so Oppa had three brothers and two sisters.
And two sisters.
And this sister.
Sarah was the one, and the other one was the one. I know the name of her husband, but not her name.
What was her husband's name?
Meyer.
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 I see.
Meyer.
Okay.
I can't.
Ruth? Is that Ruth? Ruth?
Who's?
No?
No.
I only know things from photographs, so I don't know if that's...
No.
All right. Okay, so we can
She was
fill in the gaps later.
more or less living with her mother because he had no children,
Mhm.
was looking after the mother. And the husband also was in the fur trade. He was occupied during the day, so during the day, his wife, the daughter of, the sister of Opa, lived with the mother and looked after her.
And her husband was in the same business, the same part of the family business? Did he?
No.
It was a separate fur trade.
Yeah.
Competitor.
Yeah, not a competitor, but he was in the same trade.
I see. So what exactly when we say that Oppa was in the fur trade, what exactly did he do? Did he get the furs made or?
No, only he said he sold and bought the what do you call
The
it?
pelts?
No, not the raw material.
Oh, so the pelts. That's
Yeah.
what it is. Before it wasn't made into a coat yet.
No.
I see. And he sold it to coat makers?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Wow. Do you have any furs that came from
Yeah,
you still have?
We dealt, our firm dealt with lamb. This is the cheapest of furs.
Lamb.
Lamb, yes. But Opa made Persian lamb. That was one of the better lambs. With a mink collar, I remember. I have got this coat here in my house,
Really?
but I have never worn it anymore.
Do
You know, there was a time when furs were out of fashion.
Right.
Now they start again.
I don't think of lamb as fur nowadays. I don't think people think of lamb's. It's lamb's wool you're talking about then. Is it lamb's wool or the skin of the lamb?
The skin,
So it's almost like a leather.
it's like a leather, yes. But
Interesting.
the warm leather.
Very interesting. So did anybody from the younger generation, from my dad's generation, did anybody continue the business when
No, not in this business.
so the business?
You know, the two sons, Leo and your father, went to study.
Right.
And Esther went to study. The only one who did not go into university to study was Rita.
Right. But there were other children from the generation, right? I mean, okay, Jakob he was also in the fur trade.
Also with in the same firm, E.L. Hepner.
Did he continue that when he moved to Paris?
He also worked in the same until Hitler's time.
I see. And then the war disrupted things.
Yeah.
Wow. So, all right, so we're talking about what happened when, do you remember the first time that you heard about Hitler?
We felt it, we see it, we saw it. It was given on the film and
The radio?
Not the radio, on the picture here on the
The television?
television,
You
yes.
had the television
Yeah,
in
there was
Berlin?
already in television.
Who had a television in Berlin in the 1930s?
Then we heard it on
I mean, in
no,
Leipzig.
no,
I
you're
keep saying
right.
Leipzig.
I make a mistake.
Maybe when you went to the cinema.
In the cinema and at home on the radio.
Okay.
We followed all the speeches of Hitler on the radio.
And what did people think of him when he first came onto the scene?
The Jews believed that in 3 months' time Hitler would be finished. They didn't believe that he would really do or be able to do what he did, unfortunately.
Were there any people who thought that he was more of a threat than that? Do you remember anybody saying, no, this
Not
is something we should be
personally, but I
worried
know
about?
that there was a certain circle of Jews they were so German in their way of thinking. That how can a man like Hitler live in such a German country?
Mhm.
Because he came from out of Germany. He was not a German.
Right. What was your relationship like with your non-Jewish neighbors?
Good, normal.
When did that start to change?
When Hitler more or less forced them
Mhm.
to interrupt any relationship. What we lived through in his life already. Slowly but surely it went from bad to worse.
What happened to the business?
And fortunately, both Bernhard and Max and Opa, they left Leipzig in good time and were able to enter England because they had a business visa.
What year was that they left for England?
That was after the Kristallnacht.
So we're talking about Kristallnacht. What was You were in Leipzig for Kristallnacht.
No, that was in Berlin.
You were in Berlin?
And I was in Leipzig.
You were in Leipzig. So what happened? Tell me what you remember about Kristallnacht.
That during the night they went out breaking everywhere the glass which they found in synagogues and in all kinds of Jewish places, but mostly synagogues. And they tried to burn the Sifrei Torah and do as much damage as they could to everything Jewish.
Did people know that this was going to happen beforehand, or was it a shock when it happened?
It was a shock. Nobody counted with it.
Did things like that happen in Leipzig as well?
Of course.
So what was it at the same time, the same day?
The same time it happened in the whole of Germany.
So what did you do that night?
We were happy that we didn't have a German passport. We were still Poland. Opa had a Polish passport.
Because his parents were from Poland.
That's right. And he was not really, although he was born in Germany, he never became a German citizen.
Uh-huh. So how was that?
That was our luck.
How was that luck? Why did that make a difference?
Because as a German, the German had the right to take you away from your own home and send you wherever they wanted to. Either to a concentration camp or to Poland back, where one couldn't enter because one needed a special visa. Even with your passport you had no right to enter Poland. And who wanted to go to Poland?
Absolutely. But when did this start happening? Was this already happening at the same time as Kristallnacht, that Jews were being taken out of their homes?
Yeah.
And so...
It gradually got worse, of course.
So what...
Jews were not allowed to deal with non-Jews. And non-Jews were forbidden to go to Jewish shops. Jewish shops were marked with the Magen David, so that every Goy should know he is forbidden to enter.
So Opa was still in Leipzig when this was starting.
Yeah.
Did they have this kind of thing happen to their shop?
They had not an open shop.
They didn't have an open shop.
No.
So their type of business in it was
was such that the trade was punished, but not the individual person.
They could,
Individual was only private, that
I see.
everybody was attacked by Goyim.
so did you ever personally were you ever personally attacked?
No, thank God, because we had the Polish passport. We took care of German Jews who were our friends. I don't know whether the name Karlbach tells you something.
Mm-hmm.
We are great friends with the family Karlbach. And the Rabbi Karlbach, Felix Karlbach, who lives now for many, many years since he is married in Manchester,
Mm-hmm.
and had a community for 40 years, where he was a rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
He and his family I saved by taking them in from their own home, and they stayed over Shabbat in my place until they found a way to go to England.
Was it, why did they spend this Shabbos
With me,
with you?
because if somebody entered my door, I said, "You are in the wrong house. We are protected by the Polish government."
And what was specifically happening those few days that you hid them in your house? What was that Kristallnacht? That was when you were hiding them?
Yeah. That what happened was they looked in his place and wanted to take him.
I see. And since he was hiding in your,
Yeah.
they knew in advance that they should go and find a place to hide.
No, I took them.
You said, "Come, you have to
Yeah.
come
You-
away from your
you-
house."
You must go and leave your house and come over to me.
Did they have any children with them?
No, we went on their own.
Where did you hide them?
In one of my rooms.
Just close the door and hope
Yeah,
that no one
yeah,
goes
yeah,
in.
Yeah.
So
And he was from the early morning until evening late saying
Tehillim.
Tehillim, yes.
Yeah. And
And it seemed to quieten his mind. But he was so thankful that also Opa looked after him when he eventually entered England, and gave him a little job in one of our hen Adastisruel communities, without any foreknowledge, but it protected him.
mm-hmm.
Because he had a certain right here in England to stay.
I see. So without his knowledge, while he was in Germany, Opa was here giving him a job.
Yeah, hearing from me what has happened, what have I done.
So you were alone on Kristallnacht?
Yeah,
Opa was in
England. I was with my family alone.
When did Opa come to England? Before Kristallnacht?
Yeah.
Was it a long time before that?
No, not long. He and Bernard both were working in England.
Well, what was it that made them think we have to go to England and move everyone to England? What
That was the pure sense of, we didn't go straight from Germany to England because we needed the permission.
Right.
We went to Holland where we had friends.
Holland?
In Holland. We went to Amsterdam where we had very near friends who came from Germany, from Leipzig. And he helped us to get a visa to stay in Switzerland as tourists for some time, because we were able to get some money to live in Switzerland in a hotel.
Well, but wait, I'm getting confused. You said though that Opa came here to London, and
Yeah.
he set up business here before Kristallnacht even.
Setting up businesses too much. He worked in his trade.
Uh-huh.
Setting up a home was only when the family came.
But he had to work meanwhile to try to get you all visas.
That's right.
Okay.
So he was in his trade working to earn money and to establish himself somewhere.
And how did he work on getting a visa for the whole family?
Only because we had a certain right to stay outside Germany on account of the visa we got for Switzerland. We lived 8 months in Switzerland before we entered England.
Right. What year? When did you go to Switzerland?
As soon as we left Holland, and proving that we had some money to live in Switzerland. So with the help of good friends, we went to Engelberg. Engelberg had at the time a Jewish boarding house. And the family with a baby, your father was a baby.
Right.
We all went into this place and stayed there for 8 months.
Now, I remember you told me once that you had left Germany with the intention to run away once before, and you'd gone to Switzerland, but then you heard a famous speech that Hitler was conceding that there won't be war, so he...
Yeah, that was earlier.
What was that? What am I thinking? Am I getting the story right?
Yeah, but it means we didn't really return to Leipzig.
So what happened? What from what time
we went for a short time, just for a holiday to Switzerland, because we all thought it would go over, it would blow over, and we would be able to go back again to Leipzig.
Do you remember what year this was? This holiday?
And it was sometime before we really had to go and make it real, or at least a year earlier.
I see. And your intention was just to wait in Switzerland until things blew over?
No, we took already Switzerland as a middle part where we had a certain right to live until England allowed us to come over and live in England. You couldn't just enter England. You didn't get a visa for a family to live there if you couldn't prove that you earn your money.
Right, but then you returned to Germany. I'm confusing two different stories. That's what I mean.
We never returned to Germany.
I understand that was there a time when you left and you went to Switzerland?
We went to
thinking that you were going to leave and then you went back to Germany?
No, never. That is wrongly.
Okay. I thought that I remembered this story that you had...
We had forgotten things which we wanted to take out from Germany, really. Still, that was my very simple mind that I thought I can't leave this, that or the other, which were very near my heart. And I said, let's go. At the moment there is no danger. Perhaps we can stay for some more time.
So,
but seeing that how the development went on and got stronger and stronger, we never went back to live there.
I see. And for a long time then you were by yourself with the children in Leipzig, right?
Yeah.
And Tante Fanny was also by herself?
Also without her husband.
Now, at that time, all of the children...
We lived together, really.
Oh, you lived together?
We lived together, Fanny and I and the children.
Okay, so
And the grandmother.
And the grandmother was living with you. Why? What happened to the sister who was taking care of her? This
sister, Meyer's wife, went to America because he had business in America.
I see. So they emigrated.
They emigrated to America.
And so, all right, so you were all living together with the children, and we didn't talk at all about the birth of any of your children. I know this is going backwards, but you want to talk about, you said Esther was born in 1928, right?
Yes, that's right.
So, what was it like to have a nice little girl in the house?
Oh, it was, my father died in 1930, so he was just able still to meet his first grandchild. I remember vividly when he was in hospital, Uncle Werner was desperate when he made the inquiry and you heard that he unfortunately had also cancer. He was operated and they tried to operate, but it was unfortunately too late.
He wasn't a very old man, was he?
No, he was only 59 when he died.
Oh, wow.
Very young man. It was, then I had just had Esther, shortly after Esther's birth, and they didn't want me to know, because I was not in the right state to hear that.
Right.
Being so close with my father, it was really a terrible, terrible time for me.
Yeah.
And they wanted to avoid even that I shouldn't know the actual day of the Levaya. And so Opa went on his own without me, because I was not able, I was in the middle of my childbirth.
I see.
Child was born.
Wait, but you said that your father died in 1930?
I think he said in 1930, yeah.
Because Esther was
Esther
born in
was-
1928, so maybe it was
No, was he not born in 1929?
1929?
I think in 29.
I think it's 28, to tell you the truth.
She
I think the photographs are
she was already able to walk. My father saw her still walking.
Saw her walk.
I have pictures. If you haven't seen them amongst the photos taken by a photographer, beautiful picture of Esther running around.
Yeah, there are a lot of photographs
Yeah,
of Esther.
yeah.
You had a camera.
Yeah, as a camera.
Was it a very proud?
No, it
Thing
was
to
you
own?
can't compare it with the cameras which are nowadays used. But it was a camera, and then we took enormous many pictures of Esther as first child.
I know.
It was a certain disappointment for Opa. He wished so much of a grandson.
I see.
And Esther suffered. She often said that later. She was from his grandfather treated as if she would be a boy. He put a kippah on her head.
Opa did that to her?
Yeah, just playing.
I see.
Not seriously meant, but he wanted to see what he would have looked at the boy. It was certainly wrong. Psychologically, great mistake.
But you gave her a very good education.
Yeah.
What
She
kind
was
of?
always a very clever girl,
Right.
and in school first class, and then very eager to go to university to study.
And then Uncle Leo was born. Well, first of all, let me ask you something. Was Auntie Esther named after anybody in your family?
Yeah. Now after my sister,
Your sister Elsa.
Elsa was Esther,
That was her Hebrew name.
and as she died at a young age, one gives another name with it.
I see.
So Esther is Esther Rachel.
I see. Okay. And it wasn't very long before you had Leo, right? Leo was
2 years later.
in 1930.
Yeah.
Was he born? Was your father still alive when Leo was born?
No.
He had died already.
He had already died.
This must have been around the same time then.
Yeah, 2 years later, Leo was born.
Is Leo named after anyone?
Yeah, because Opa's father's name was Leib.
I see. Leib. And that's Leo's name.
Leo. Leo is Leib, really.
And what were Esther and Leo like? Was Opa must have been very happy to have a son now, right?
Very happy, very happy. He was very proud to be the grandfather of a very beautiful boy. He was more than beautiful. I was always kept in the streets and asking if people tried to make conversation with him. He was an exceptionally good-looking boy.
And were they well-behaved children?
Pardon?
Were they well-behaved children?
Very well behaved. I mean, I had not such an easy life because I couldn't allow myself so much help. But I was quite strong and did a lot of work of my own, on my own.
What type of work do you mean?
I mean, to manage my household.
I see. Did you live, this is still before the real trouble started brewing.
Yeah.
So did you live, were you living comfortably?
Much more comfortable than later.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in a beautiful home.
And did you live, were you very close with, it sounds like you were very close with Bernhard and Fanny.
Very close.
They also had children around the same age as Leo, right?
And the children were friends, the cousins.
So there were
Edith, for instance, was always very friendly with Esther.
Mhm. And then they had also another little girl that died, right?
Yeah, that was very sad. Also because there was no penicillin.
Really?
That she had an ear infection.
Oh, yeah.
It was terrible, terribly sad. And Tante Fanny and Uncle Bernard never got over that.
How old was she?
She was 12 years when she died.
She was older than
Older than Edith, yeah. Her
Huh.
name was Margot.
Margot.
Yeah.
Oh, really? And then Ari is is around the same age as my father, right?
Yeah, 1 year older.
1 year older.
He also, when Ari was born, I somehow wished so ardently to have a boy, to be able to give him the name of my father.
Well, meanwhile you had Rita, right?
Yeah.
So all right. So Rita was born in, well, she was here. She talked on the tape.
2 years older than she was after Leo.
2 years after Leo, 1934.
Yeah, she was 2 years younger than Leo.
Okay.
Yeah, between the children, always 2 years. Your father was again 2 years younger than Rita.
I think it's my dad was a little bit more because he's born in 1938, so it's 4 years younger.
Oh, 4 years younger.
Right. So it was Rita named after anyone?
After her grandmother, from the mother's side. He said Frederica was a German name. This is Rivka in Hebrew, and we made it out for Rita.
That's your mother's mother.
Yeah, my mother.
And nobody got the name of your mother.
No, that was not allowed because of the name. That Opa's mother was named Leah, and my mother's name was Leah, and that wasn't done. One couldn't give the wife the same name as the mother who had died already.
Right. So
it's tradition.
Right. So after Rita, when Rita was born, still things in Germany were still pretty good.
Okay.
What were things in 1934? Did you start to feel any changes yet?
No, one didn't take so much notice. One knew already from the appearance of the Hitler group, but it all seemed this is a very temporary thing. They would never get really strong. One had the feeling that the German government is strong enough to fight them.
So
but they proved they were not strong enough. They didn't take it seriously enough.
But at that time you were still going on holidays
Yeah,
and having
yeah.
a good time.
Yeah.
I see. And then what type of schooling did the children have?
My children.
Your children.
There was a Jewish Karlbach school already.
Really?
Rita went already to the school. And Leo went into a non-Jewish grammar school.
And how did he get his Jewish education?
He had a private, there was a group of Jewish children belonging to our community. They had a kind of a better midrash where they got the lessons from the Rav of the community.
And Esther went to this Jewish school. When you said Rita before, did you mean Esther? Esther went to a Jewish school,
no, she
Karlbach school?
No, she didn't exist at that time.
Oh, I see. All right. So she went also to a
very good school for girls here in Hendon. Not in Hendon, but in Hemstead-Down suburb.
Esther?
Esther, yeah.
No, I'm talking about in Germany. What kind of school was it that Esther went to in Germany?
In Germany. To the Karlbach school.
Oh, to the Karlbach school. I see. Okay. So.
But here in London, she went to one of the best girls' school, really.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Germany then. All right, so after Rita was born, it's 1934, and my father was born in 1938. So was there any did you notice the things starting to change before my father was born in 1938?
Very much so, the last year. You know, when your father was born, friends of mine approached me and said, you know, was it really necessary to have a child in this most dangerous time?
Oh my goodness.
It was considered a crazy idea to bring up a child in this time.
And what could you respond to them?
I said, I have my child in with help of God. I will bring him up in the same way and hope that nothing will happen to all of us.
Was Uppa living in gone to England already when my father was born?
No, he came home.
He came back from England for my dad's birth. Yeah. And my dad is Gershon, Gershi.
Gershon. Yeah.
Who is he named for?
After he was named after a grandfather. On which side was it now? He was named after my father.
It's Gershon. That's Gershon Walter.
Yeah, Gershon Walter.
So you finally had this boy. You were saying before you wanted to name after your father. Yeah. So what was the name Gershon? Did that have any significance? Because there are other Gershons in the family also.
But not belonging to to my family.
I see.
This Gershon is really my father's name.
Which I'm sorry.
Gershon, the Jewish name Gershon. Right. Gershon Walter. Yeah. He was called in German Walter, but his Jewish name was Gershon.
Oh, your father's Jewish name was also Gershon?
Gershon, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I never knew that. Okay, so the other there's a Gershon Hepner that was a cousin. That was the name of you said Jacob's son. So and that was named after.
He was called after not the same Gershon.
Obviously not the same, not your father. Okay, so completely different.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. All right, so what was it like having a baby in this crazy Germany?
I was happy with him at any time. I was very proud and happy with him. Of course, at the time when we left, it was a very difficult time. I tried to carry him in my arms, really.
There's a story about a German soldier coming to take you away, and that you managed to persuade him to go away.
That was it. It's the night when the Karlbachs were hidden in my place. When he came, he asked me, "We come to call for Frau Hepner." I said, "Frau Hepner has got a Polish passport. You can't ask for me. I'm not under your direction." And they left again. When I opened the door, I always opened the door with my passport in the hand.
This was when my father was already born. This is already in 1938?
Yeah, that was after the birth of your father.
And
then they came the second day after this happened, they came again.
The next day?
Yeah, we are coming, we are told you must come with us. So I said, I can't come because I am not well. My son is a baby, and I can call my doctor to certify that he is not able to, that I'm not able to leave. I made myself ill.
You made yourself ill?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
By protecting myself and saying I feel ill, my doctor can come and give you the confirmation.
But how did you, were you really ill? Did you make yourself ill, or they just pretended to?
Pretending.
Pretended. Good actress.
Yeah.
So and they believed you? They left? Did they call the doctor?
They didn't call the doctor, but I called the doctor. And the doctor said to this man who waited to take me, "This woman cannot come with you. She has a temperature and is ill." So they said, they insisted and would almost have taken me to hospital.
Really? And?
At the last moment, I don't remember how we got out of that.
And the whole time you had the Karlbach
Yeah.
in the back room?
That was really something they never have forgotten. They are one of the few. I don't know another friend who was so memorizing what we have done by saving their life.
What, wow. Where were where were your other children? Esther, Leo, Rita, where were they?
They're all in the house.
They were all in the house?
They're all
What did they do? What would they used to do if they heard a knock like that on the door?
They were always never allowed to be visible.
So they weren't in school when this
I
happened.
always told him, you must leave me because my baby is crying.
Mhm.
I must feed the baby. At that time they were still listening to words like that. It was the very beginning.
And then what happened? What did you do after that? It's 2 days in a row, the same 2 days in a row they came to your house knocking on your door?
Yeah.
So the third day, what did you do?
Then I brought the doctor.
You brought the doctor?
Yeah.
And
the
then-
doctor confirmed. And he said, we will go, but we may come back and we have to bring you to hospital. But he's thankful that they didn't come back.
They didn't come back.
No.
So what did you do after that? Did you...
Meanwhile, Opa was working frantically to get for us the permission to enter England and to get the permission to live here.
Did he know that you had had these visits from the Nazis?
Yeah, he knew everything.
How did you were able to call him on the telephone or write to him? How did he know that these things were happening?
He didn't know the individual case, but he had heard what's going on.
I see. All right. So at what point did you actually leave? Did you actually pack up your bags and go?
That was when we left to stay in Holland for.
Right, but what was it that got you? What did you just get a letter from Opa saying now you should leave?
No, he
made
couldn't
you...
help us at all. Through my friendship with friends in Holland, they said we will. No, I'm wrong. Opa got to know got contact with the man. This was a couple in Holland, and the man he had heard, was able, through the help of the English consul, to get visas to come to England, but not to stay in England, just to get out of Germany.
For the family.
Yeah, and so we got out, but we got out only because we could show them that we won't stay in England. We will go from Holland to Switzerland.
So you were the visas meant to help you to leave Germany or to get into England or to both? I'm a little confused.
We got out to Holland with the only reason really to get in Holland a visa for Switzerland.
I see. All right. So
we knew that we couldn't enter England for the time being.
I see. And how did you get the word, now you should leave? How did you get the...
I got a call from Opa. It's the last moment before the war was, really in the last moment. And we had a lovely life in Switzerland whilst we were there. We were rather out of contact with the world events. And I remember when Opa phoned me, you have to hurry. You seem to be living in a different world and not to know what happens.
This was in Switzerland.
That's what, whilst we were in Switzerland.
You had a very good